Webb announced recently that she was going to drop a series of articles that would add more information to the Epstein story that would also, in ways, implicate other people, not just the ones that have been mentioned. We covered her story about the connection between Diddy and Epstein through MCA, etc. And now she is mentioning other names that I think you guys may find interesting. Now, Donald Trump is referenced in this as well in a different way, but there are other players that have been involved. Let's go ahead and get into it. This is the latest article from Whitney Webb, investigative series about Jeffrey Epstein. First Friends, how Italy's Donald Trump introduced Naomi Campbell to Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, yes. See how more people are being added to this story? There's Naomi Campbell, there's Flavio, there's Diddy. We'll get into all of it. Whitney is making more connections. So let's just jump forward to the Naomi Campbell part because here we go. We're not going to read the entire article. It is rather long, but there are certain parts that we got to get into. The models and moguls of the Black Book. Naomi Campbell, who was born in Britain to the parents of Jamaican origin, began her modeling career in the mid-'80s at age 15. Prior to that, she appeared in music videos for Bob Marley and Culture Club and in the Pink Floyd film The Wall. Let me go back and check and see if she was in Karma Chameleon. I didn't know she was in Culture Club, videos. Let me go back and see. Was she in Karma Chameleon? That was the one song I liked by Boy George, like Culture Club. Karma Chameleon. Let me go back and see, okay? She first modeled for Lexi Wexner's own Victoria's Secret in 1996, a year after the lingerie brand began its own very popular televised fashion shows. Those shows, until they were suspended in the wake of Epstein's scandal in 2019, attracted more viewers than any of the fashion shows combined. So we're going into the Victoria's Secret. We all know that Leslie Wexner, a longtime friend of Jeffrey Epstein, also, from what I understand, gave Epstein money as well. Goes on to say here that Ed Resnick, who was the chief marketing operator of L Brands, Victoria's Secret parent company, who was later accused of inappropriate behavior towards models, along with some of the brand's top modeling agent, including Campbell, can now be found in an infamous contact book of Leslie Wexner's longtime fixer and now deceased sex trafficker, Jeffrey Epstein. Let's go on and talk about this a little bit here. Campbell, when she was 17, she worked for Elite. After Elite bought out the agency and had first signed her in 1987. Goes on to say, we're going to jump forward a little bit. Elite and Campbell parted ways in 1993, with Casablancas accusing her of being crazy, irrational, and uncontrollable and mistreating staff. Campbell has been accused of a series of assaults and for mistreating staff on several occasions over the past couple of decades. So that was Naomi Campbell there when she was working for Victoria's Secret. Jeffrey Epstein attempted, but ultimately failed, to acquire Elite's American branch in the early 2000s. However, another close associate of Epstein, model turned businesswoman Nicole Junkerman, was also managed by Elite in 1995. And this may be how she first became acquainted with Epstein sometime between the late 1990s and early 2000s. As will be noted later, this is also roughly the same time frame in which Campbell claims to have first met Epstein. Junkerman, in 2002, allegedly assisted Epstein in sexually blackmailing 2 U.S. senators, the identities of which still remain unknown, at a Wexner-owned residence in the UK, suggesting that some of the relationships Epstein cultivated with certain models was related to sexual blackmail efforts. I wonder who those 2 U.S. senators are. What I tell you, politicians. Epstein began to focus heavily on the modeling industry in 1995. That was after he teamed up with Wexner. Some evidence, however, suggests that Epstein had become very involved with recruiting models for Victoria's Secret as early as 1993. That year, Epstein first teamed up with Jean-Luc Brunel, a controversial model agency mogul from France, who, much like Epstein, died suspiciously in prison in 2022 while awaiting charges related to the Epstein scandal. Coincidence? Brunel is believed to have played a major role in Epstein's sex trafficking enterprise. Had brought Epstein into close connections with Faith Cates of Next Models, one of the more respected agencies in the industry, who was a former business partner of Brunel's. So, what you see happening here, we're going to jump forward a little bit, is that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in the modeling industry, right? So, it seems like he kind of had his hands in different areas here. Some in the industry even referred to Epstein as one of the most important people in modeling since the late 1990s. His connection with modeling world persisted up until his first arrest in 2007, particularly with his ties with Jean-Luc Brunel. So, listen to this part. This is interesting. With Brunel, an apartment complex owned by a company run by Epstein's brother, Mark, was said to have housed underage and just of age girls, mainly from Eastern Europe and South America. Some, and like many of the girls and young women who had their travel documents confiscated by Epstein's associates and were coerced into having sex with powerful men. One of the models that flew on Epstein's plane and traveled to his island, Ruslana, a model for Vera Wang, DKNY, and others, jumped to her death from the ninth floor apartment roughly 2 years after her trip with Epstein. The reason remains unknown. Epstein's Black Book of Contacts confirms he certainly did have influence within the modeling industry. Okay, so let's jump forward a little bit here. We need to get to this part right here. In the Black Book, we're talking about Rodriguez. Rodriguez, I want to make sure I tell you him is right here. Alfred Rodriguez, that is Epstein's butler, was Epstein's butler. So let's talk about what Whitney says with this book. In the Black Book, Rodriguez had circled Briatore's name along with the names of Leslie, Abigail Wexner, Jean-Luc Brunel, Ghislaine Maxwell, Sarah Kellen, Peter Soros, who's the nephew of infamous financier George Soros, Glenn and Eva Dubin, Ehud Barak, Bill Richardson, who was the former Democratic governor of New Mexico, Alan Dershowitz, and President Donald Trump. In the case of Trump, as well as other circled names, it is unknown why specifically Rodriguez singled them out. Were some of the names once clients of Epstein's sex ring, which were material witnesses, enablers, or direct accomplices? So let's take a look at that picture here. And you'll see here's Flavio Briatore. We're going to get to him in a second. Briatore and Donald Trump. So this is what she's talking about here. Now let's jump forward to Flavio, not to be confused with Flavio. Oh, who was the guy? That guy with the long hair is like, I can't believe it's not butter. I forget his name. You guys know what I'm talking about. So let's get to Flavio. This is who Whitney says is the Trump of Italy. So he had a failed restaurant venture. He went on to become the assistant to a local financier, Attilio Duto. Goes on here. He makes connections with the banks. Let's go forward a little bit more. During the early 1990s, another member of P2, former Italian Prime Minister Silvio, would become one of Flavio's long-standing and closest friends. Interesting. Silvio, longtime holding company, Fininvest, is alleged to have made annual payments of 200 million lire to the Sicilian mafia for an unspecified period after the company was founded in 1975. He was later accused by multiple parties of continuing involvement with organized crime, often in the pursuit of business favors throughout the 80s and the 90s. So here we go here. So Flavio was connected to this gentleman here who was connected to organized crime. Now we're getting organized crime back in the picture. Remember, Whitney talked about this a little bit in the Diddy Epstein article and MCA records. Now we are getting into the organized crime bit with the modeling industry and some of these financiers. So let's continue to go on here. Their relationship blossomed. It is suggestive that Flavio's earlier connection to Duto helped connect him into a world where the mafia and other powerful interests mixed in the shadows. So everybody see this? Check this part out. Author Paul Williams, who wrote the book on the infamous Operation Gladio, wrote that Duto's predecessor, Michelle Sindona, had been a linchpin between organized crime networks, particularly those involving the National Crime Syndicate, the CIA, and the Vatican, which eventually resulted in the toppling of governments, wholesale slaughter, and financial devastation in post-war Europe. Interesting. Several members of P2 were implicated in the conspiracy, including employees and members of the Agnelli family. The Agnellis, years later, would later become financially entangled with Jeffrey Epstein. This is very interesting. Again, we're going to jump forth. I'm trying to give you just a summary of this of sorts, because I don't want to confuse you, and I can put the link there so you can read the entire article yourself as well. Come over here. So Duto was later murdered. After Duto's murder, Flavio later reappeared in Milan working for Finanziaria General Italia at the Milan Stock Exchange. While there, he became connected to the aristocratic Caproni dynasty, who had built their fortunes by dominating Italy's aeronautical industry for many decades. In particular, Flavio became close to Count Accio Caprioni, who was accused and tried for financial crimes against banks and other companies in the early 1980s. So again, more corruption, more connection to crime. We're still on Flavio here. Let's jump forward a little bit because it gets back to Naomi Campbell. So this part right here, notably, Epstein's main patron and another circled name in his black book, Leslie Wexner, also had ties to the Genovese crime family, according to heavily suppressed documents originally authored by Ohio law enforcement. Now, this is important because Leslie was the founder of Victoria's Secret. I told you earlier that him and Jeffrey Epstein, already had a relationship. It was also, alleged that he gave Epstein money to start ventures, etc. Some had argued rather that relationship was more than just a business or friend relationship, and rather if it was romantic or not, don't know. But that gentleman who owned Victoria's Secret, according to Whitney Webb's article, he had connections with the Genovese crime family. So now we're seeing another person that was connected to Jeffrey Epstein, Flavio, and now Leslie, who owned Victoria's Secret, who was also connected to crime family. Let's continue on. Let's go on here. So back to that book, The Genovese Crime Family. Those documents resulted from the police investigation into the mob-style murder of Wexner's lawyer, Arthur Shapiro, who was due to testify to the IRS shortly after he was killed. Shortly thereafter, Wexner hired Jeffrey Epstein to sort out his tangled finances. And in this photo here, you will see Luciano Benetton, Alessandro Benetton, Flavio, and Bernie Ecclestone. Esclone. Uh, let's go on a little bit more here because I want to get back to the part about Naomi Campbell. So, long story short, Flavio continues to connect himself to other crime people. Also, during the same period, Flavio was involved in another scandal, one that involved an alleged effort to sell atomic bombs to Libya's Gaddafi. This attempt to make Libya nuclear power had notably involved an infamous Saudi family tied to the Bank of Credit and Commerce International scandal and money laundering for drug cartels. So we're talking about big people here, guys. Like this is why I keep telling you they're not going to release these files. It's not just, oh, maybe it's just a couple billionaires here and there. Maybe it's some politicians. No, we're talking about powerful people in the world. We're talking about connections to organized crime. They're not, this is why you not getting this information. Let's go on. T who said Flavio was Heidi Klum's baby daddy. Ooh, Heidi. Yes, Darius is global. That's why. That's a big part of it. Let's fast forward a little bit here and let's jump back to the Naomi Campbell part. Because like I said, like you guys can read this on your own. I'll put this in here. But long story short, Flavio connected to organized crime, a lot of corruption, even financial corruption that you can talk about there as well. Let me fast forward. Okie dokie. Sorry, guys, it's a long article. I just want to make sure. All right. Another thing that Flavio did, his success at Formula One, right? So he was also involved in the world of racing. A race fixing scandal in 2008 that favored Flavio's then star driver Fernando Alonso at the Singapore Grand Fix resulted in Flavio's supposed lifetime ban from the sport. So this guy was everywhere. Flavio was not just, an alleged, financier. He did not just entrench himself into finance, but also he was in sports, organized crime. He had his hand in all of these different activities. So think about all the people he knew. Now, in this particular photo here, it says Flavio with Michael Schumacher. This is Michael Schumacher on the right. You see how he was also involved in Formula One? Okay, so let's go back on here. Again, trying to jump forward. The Flavio-Trump relationship. Flavio and Donald Trump first met in the 1980s. Flavio has declined to give an exact date. It says the introduction to Trump was allegedly related to the fact that the two men at the time were trying to start their careers after the stock market crash with the Black Monday in 1987. Interesting. So that's how they met. Now it goes here to say, according to the interview, per Motorsport, it is not surprising that their paths cross. The scene of playboys who wanted to get rich quickly was manageable even in New York at the time. You knew each other. The two other New York-based playboys closest to Trump during this time were Jeffrey Epstein and Tom Barack of Colony Capital, who still remains close ties to Trump, now serving as U.S. ambassador to Turkey and also to Flavio. At the time, Epstein was just beginning to work with Leslie Wexner and had spent much of the early 1980s hiding and finding stolen money for powerful people. It seems likely that Flavio's first met Epstein either via Trump, who broke ties with Epstein decades later over competing efforts to purchase a Florida mansion, or Barack, who is also listed in Epstein's Black Book. That's Tony Barack, not Barack Obama, just FYI for people who are wondering. However, unlike the listings for Flavio and Trump in that book, Tony Barack's name was not circled by Epstein's former butler, Alfredo Rodriguez. Tellingly, Flavio has, to this date, never been asked about his Epstein relationship, despite granting numerous interviews since Epstein's 2019 arrest and death. Interesting. Let's go on here. Flavio stated that he grew even closer to Trump after officiating a meeting between the real estate mogul and Flavio's then boss, Luciano Benetton. The meeting, which occurred sometime between 1991 and 1992, occurred at the Plaza Hotel in New York, the site of Victoria's Secret's annual fashion show. Jumping forward here, Trump's mentor and lawyer, Roy Cohn, an organized crime associate, had been intimately involved in those blackmail efforts, and Trump, after he bought the Plaza, was accused of hosting parties in the Plaza Hotel suites where young women and girls were introduced to older, richer men, in which the women were allegedly exploited and illegal drugs were widely available. Around this time, Trump had also taken a controlling interest in Resorts International, an infamous mob linked CIA front company that had formerly been known as the Mary Carter Paint Company. Flavio claims to have introduced Benetton to Trump because I was sure it was possible to do something together. It is unclear what, if any, agreement Benetton and Trump may have reached during or after the meeting. However, Flavio claimed that after arranging this meeting, Trump offered him a job. Flavio elaborated that he had nearly turned down an offer from Benetton to deepen his involvement in the family's F1 racing team because of the offer from Trump. Now, in that same interview, Flavio also specified that the offer had been related to the commercial side of Trump's new casino in Atlantic City. Notably, Trump's decision to acquire control over the mob and intelligence-linked Resorts International had largely been motivated by his efforts to develop Resorts' casino interests in Atlantic City, namely the Taj Mahal, which officially opened in 1990. A few years later, Trump ran into major financial trouble and was bailed out by the Rothschild banking interests. Let me pause here for a second and explain something to everybody. I think what people have to realize, and for older New Yorkers, they'll know what I'm talking about. Especially back in the 70s, and I would probably also say early 80s, there was a lot of mob influence in business in New York, and probably still some of that. But it from what I understand and from what I've read before, it wasn't uncommon for some of these multimillionaire successful businessmen to have some type of connection to organized crime. And I want to give you an example, right? Like, you want to buy a building, but they don't want to sell it to you. Okay, so you got the money, but they don't want to let it go. What would you do? If you are a ruthless businessman, you would use your connections that you have with organized crime, get them to rough some people up to get them to sell you that building. I think it was more common than people realize. I really do. Now, that's not to excuse Donald Trump, but what I'm saying that to point out something important. Roy Cohn is someone that was close to Donald Trump, who was connected to organized crime. And Roy Cohn has gotten Donald Trump out of jams before in the past. So put the two and two together. Darius said it's still a thing. Yeah, like it, you know what I'm saying? So let's continue on a little bit more. Let's go down here. This is where we get into The Apprentice a little bit. The two never ended up working directly together on any casino related venture, and they eventually did collaborate on The Apprentice. So Flavio was with The Apprentice as well. It also goes on to say here, let's jump forward. Flavio has also been very supportive of Trump's political career and has characterized Trump as a political moderate. During the 2016 election, Flavio had heralded his longtime friend as an unparalleled talent that regular Americans can identify with more than career politicians. So he supported Trump politically as well. Now, let's jump to Naomi Campbell again. Naomi Campbell is the woman who connects Epstein and Diddy. This part is really interesting. Here we go. Photos from the occasion where Naomi Campbell claims to have first met Epstein, her 31st birthday party hosted by Flavio's yacht. Now, this shows Naomi and Epstein associates in the same photograph. Those photographs are now rather infamous as they also showed Epstein's most prominent accuser, an underage Virginia Giuffre. Let's look at these pictures real quick. So there's Virginia Giuffre right there with, that's Prince Andrew. There's Ghislaine Maxwell. Look at the second picture. There's Ghislaine Maxwell. There's Naomi Campbell over here. I hope you guys can follow my cursor so you can see it. And then in this picture over here on the right, there's Virginia Giuffre. And then here's Virginia Giuffre right here. And there's Naomi Campbell right down here in the bottom right-hand corner. And what it says under this picture, it shows that this compilation of photos was produced by the Daily Mail. It shows Naomi Campbell, Flavio, Ghislaine, and then underage Virginia Roberts. So again, Virginia Roberts, later Virginia Giuffre. Now, let me make something very clear here. There's Flavio. Now, you asked me answer this question. Why would an underage girl be at these parties hanging out with these old ass people? Think about it. What the hell do they have in common with a teenage girl? Now, we continue on here. In addition, Naomi Campbell also flew on Epstein's private jet 5 times. Now, those flights take place between 2001 and 2003. One of the flights saw her travel with former President Bill Clinton. Highlights. One of the flights saw Naomi Campbell travel with Bill Clinton. So, yeah, man. Why would a married man be traveling on a private jet with supermodel without the wifey? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Let's continue on. 2 of the flights originated from the U.S. Virgin Islands, where Flavio had major long-standing connections and where Epstein's infamous island was located. Naomi Campbell has not publicly commented on the flights or if she ever visited Epstein's USVI island residence. However, she has said that she ran in the same circles as Epstein, but has insisted that the two weren't close. You know, I love this, right? This is the phrase you just love to hear. Oh, we ran in the same circles, but we weren't really close. But you flying on his private jet? Continuing on. Check this out. In addition, some of the flights that Naomi took on Epstein's plane went to Brazil, a place where Campbell has said she would go out on the street and recruit teen girls for the modeling industry. Whitney, drop the damn beats. Whitney Webb did it with this thing, man. Everybody connecting the dots. So it just so happens that Naomi Campbell was on Jeffrey Epstein's private jet flying to Brazil, which is the same country she would go to recruit girls, teenage girls, for the modeling industry. But y'all ain't close. Okay. Here it goes here. The Miami Herald reported in 2018 that one lawsuit against Epstein claimed that he used an international modeling agency to recruit girls as young as 13 from Europe, Ecuador, and Brazil. It is unknown if Campbell had played a role in those efforts while traveling to Brazil on Epstein's aircraft. However, she was romantically linked to Flavio when most of the flights took place. And Flavio is one of the names that is circled in Epstein's Black Book. 1 second. Okay. Now, the other connection. In addition, Campbell was accused of involvement in the sex trafficking scandal where her former boyfriend and longtime friend, the rapper Diddy, who recently stood trial for crimes similar to those reportedly committed by Epstein. One allegation claims that Campbell was used by Diddy as a lure for his victims. If true, those allegations may offer cause to re-examine her flights on Epstein's infamous jet. Furthermore, Naomi Campbell was also accused by Epstein victims of being aware of his sex trafficking operation, but doing nothing to stop it. Indeed, while Campbell has claimed to have known nothing of Epstein's crimes and to support his victims, Virginia Giuffre tweeted at Naomi Campbell after his 2019 death, accusing her of knowing what was happening. You saw me at your parties. You saw me at Epstein's homes. You saw me on the plane. You saw me get my hair cut. You saw me on the streets. You watched me be abused. You saw me. Virginia Giuffre wrote in early 2020. And it makes you wonder, Naomi Campbell entering the modeling industry at such a young age herself, it makes me wonder if something similar happened to her. Now, that is not to excuse anything if she was involved with this, but it makes me wonder if she was also treated this way, if she was groomed, and then she started doing the grooming as well. We got some more here, folks. In another tweet, Virginia Giuffre said that there is no way in hell that she, Naomi Campbell, didn't know what was happening in front of her own eyes. They were all aware of Epstein and Maxwell's didn't go at sick to hide it either. Notably, Naomi Campbell was also mentioned in the testimony of Epstein accuser Johanna Solberg. Campbell dated Flavio in 1998 and the relationship ended in 2002. Some reports characterize their relationships as on and off. During the same period, Campbell was said to have also been dating rapper Diddy, with that relationship allegedly taking place in the year 2001. Now, shortly after Diddy ended his relationship with Jennifer Lopez. That same year, in its October issue, the British edition of Vogue featured Diddy and Campbell on its cover with the headline, Naomi and Puff, the ultimate power duo. Some reports state they dated in 2002. Photographs also show Flavio partying with Diddy in the early and mid 2000s. When I tell you all these people roll together, this is what I'm talking about. One interview that Naomi Campbell gave The Guardian in 2006 reported that Naomi Campbell has always been attracted to older men, mentor figures. The article added that sometimes they have been boyfriends, sometimes she's adopted them immediately as her dad. With respect to those claims, Naomi was quoted as saying, I've got my dad, Chris Blackwell, my dad, Quincy Jones, I've got Flavio, and I've got Mr. Nelson Mandela, my grandfather. She stated that she looks for father figures as boyfriends. Campbell later stated of Flavio that he was her boyfriend, but had since become her mentor. Shortly after his split from Naomi Campbell, Flavio began dating supermodel Heidi Klum. Klum had been previously associated with Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew, another known associate of Epstein. Maxwell was also photographed with Donald Trump and his then girlfriend and later wife Melania at the same event. Melania had recently begun dating Trump, and Maxwell later claimed to have introduced them. So you guys see this? Ghislaine Maxwell says that she introduced Melania to Donald Trump. So this is what I was trying to tell you guys. Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is closer than he's trying to make it seem. Let's continue on here as well. Heidi Klum, like Naomi Campbell, was alleged by at least one Epstein accuser to have flown on Epstein's plane. However, Heidi Klum denied the allegations. Isn't Heidi Klum married to Seal? Isn't she married to Seal? Kissed by a Rose, man? Interesting. Going on a little bit more here, Flavio's relationship with Klum was publicly announced in early 2003 and ended in 2004. Now, despite the short nature of their relationship, it provided plenty of fodder for tabloids, particularly as the couple split shortly after Klum announced her pregnancy, and the two argued publicly about where the child should be born. Let's go on here. Yeah, singer Seal. I forgot about. Yeah, she was with Kissed by a Rose, Seal. Kissed by a rose on a grave. Moving forward, Campbell's long-term relationship with Flavio also deserves a quick mention. Campbell began dating billionaire Dorinan in 2008, and the two split in 2013 after Dorinan was photographed vacationing with another woman and embracing another model that he had met through Naomi Campbell. Now, Dorinan is a billionaire of Russia origin. He made his money largely through his close-knit relationship with commodity trader and Mossad asset Mark Rich. Rich, a longtime fugitive from the U.S. authorities with a very close tie to Israeli intelligence, was also close to prominent figures in the mega group, namely Michael Steinhardt, who alongside former Israeli Prime Minister Barak allegedly helped pressure former President Bill Clinton to controversially pardon Rich right before he left office. Rich also had controversial ties to Bruce Rappaport, a shipping magnate and banker tied to U.S. and Israeli intelligence, as well as the criminal bank BCCI, which, in addition to banking drug cartels, intelligence agencies, and financial criminals, also ran a sex trafficking operation where minors were abused at the hands of the bank's VIPs. Again, there are multiple Jeffrey Epsteins. Now, they all just happen to be friends, but they weren't close. But they're on each other's like jets multiple times. And now, Dorinan began his career working for Mark Rich in Switzerland before founding the Capital Group in Moscow in 1991. Capital Group was originally a commodities trading firm that later turned into a real estate investment company and allegedly engaged in extensive commodity trading with Rich in its early days. Let's jump forward to Glencore right here because this part is important. Lost my place here. 1 second. One article published by Business Insider referred to Dorinan as one of the people Rich had chosen to mentor. Dorinan has since divested from Capital Group. Dorinan's subsequent main corporate vehicle, luxury hotel manager Aman, came under fire for firing Charles McGonigal as its head of security. McGonigal, a former FBI agent, was arrested while working for Aman for taking secret payments from Oleg Deripaska. Deripaska, one of Russia's richest men, started like Dorinan as a commodity trader, later merging his aluminum mining interests with Mark Rich's Glencore. The Rothschild family, both close ties to both Deripaska and Glencore, highlighting this one. This is, I think, the second or third time we have mentioned the Rothschild family in this article. And finally, who was pulling the strings? The article exploring the ties between Flavio, Naomi Campbell, Trump, and Epstein does not intend to imply that Flavio-Trump relationship alone has influenced the current administration's failure to release the bulk of the so-called Epstein files. Instead, the connections between these individuals reveals that, as Naomi Campbell herself once noted, they all swam in the same corrupt circles. They all swam in the same corrupt circles. But you don't know anything, right? Like you're all in these same corrupt circles, but like, I don't know anything about that. And as they share significant ties to people and entities linked to organized crime, corruption across various industries, and sex trafficking. The intricacy of these circles will only become more apparent in subsequent entries in this series. So again, this is just the beginning of she's doing more entries into the series. Whitney Webb is. Epstein himself was the management, not the owner. Epstein himself was the management, not the owner. He was not the owner of the criminal enterprises that have now made him infamous. The tight-knit network of oligarchs that enabled Epstein are transnational, as their influence spans several countries. They work to manipulate global affairs, global finance, while staying out of the limelight themselves, with more public-facing financiers, moguls, and politicians serving as their middlemen. This is what I was talking about. The head of the snake is not seen. The head of the snake is not the one that is being brought to trial. They stay in the shadows. They don't put themselves out there like that. They got people, they got soldiers doing their work. So if Epstein was the manager, just remember that there were other Epsteins out there, and still are other Epsteins out there doing that work. Now, this part here as well, these oligarchs are the truly unaccountable ones, and their reoccurring presence in the circles around Epstein, Trump, and some of their longtime mutual associates appear to be the real reason for the mismanagement of the Epstein file release. There you go. Because then you got to explain how you in all these corrupt circles with these people, but you know nothing about nothing. However, at least one figure in the Trump administration, aside from Trump himself, may stand to benefit from the administration's failure to release the lion's share of the Epstein-related documents in the government's hands. As will be detailed in the second article in this series, a close friend of Donald Trump and Flavio currently plays an outside yet quiet role in the Trump administration foreign policy, in addition to having unsettling yet largely unknown ties to the Epstein scandal. I can't wait for that next article. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we got to give Whitney Webb a round of applause. This is just the first step in the series. Another one is coming. We need to find out who this person is in this Trump administration that is also a part of this as well, that has not been mentioned. Drop it. We're dropping the motherfucking beat. We're dropping the motherfucking beat. We're dropping the beat for Whitney, guys. Drop the beat. That beat beat is for Whitney, obviously not for these crimes. She is doing the damn thing. We connecting the dots tonight because Eric knows what's up. Because you see, there are two sets of interests. Thank you so much, Eric. Eric wrote this Substack earlier today. This is the chart I keep telling you about. Feudalism then and now. Medieval feudalism versus corporate feudalism. If you look over here today, corporate feudalism, the billionaires. Eric changed this to billionaires. Good job, Eric. Billionaires at the top. You have big bankers. That's JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. Corporate elite is next. That's Fortune 500 multinationals. Elected officials are right here in the middle. They're not even at the top of the freaking pyramid. And this is what we've been trying to tell people, at least over on this show. Then you have top bureaucrats, commissioners, secretaries, judges, top professionals, doctors, entertainers, and clergy. And everybody else is at the motherfucking bottom. There are two sets of interests, those at the top 0.1% and those of the 99%. The top 0.1% is determined to increase its wealth and power more and more, regardless of the costs that fall on everyone else. They use their enormous resources to corrupt the government and economic system to work in their favor. They will literally kill us all for the sake of more profitable quarter. The interests of the 99% are vastly different. Equality, justice for all, sustainability, transparency, peace. Recognizing how these interests are at odds and how the billionaire class is working against us is key to understanding how the world really operates. The controversy around the Epstein files is a good example. The billionaire class and their servants in government are deeply implicated in the crimes that occurred, so it's in their interest to keep it all under wraps. It doesn't matter whether they are affiliated with the Democratic or the Republican Party, they serve the same interests, and it's not the interest of the 99%. In the updated feudalism then and now graphic, it's the billionaires at the top, the elected officials in the middle, and everyone else, the 99% at the bottom, getting crushed. So what do we do about it? As with all things in politics, an MCDS analysis brings clarity. Money corruption demands solutions. Billionaires with too much money to spend are the reason Epstein's businesses existed. C, it was allowed to happen and stay hidden because our government is deeply corrupt. D, it is crucial that we have a clear demand. Fix big money in politics and government. Nothing really gets better until we do this. And S, the demand leads to solutions, and you can see 11 demands for that. Eric, you want to share the link for 11 demands in the chat. This is imperative that people really understand this. And this is why I continue to say you can elect all these different candidates for office as you want. That's fine. But they're not the people with the power. The people with the power are the billionaires, the oligarchs, the people who are really running all this shiz. As you just saw in Whitney Webb's article, this is global. This isn't something that just happened on the Virgin Islands. So you got a global enterprise mixed with celebrities and politicians and organized crime. And that is why those politicians don't want to release the Epstein files. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.